Carol here, Paul Foley here. Michael, I don't see yet. Penny here, Paul Tully here, I'm here. And as far as ex officio non-voting, I see Leon. Is John DeFederico on? Andrew
No, I think
Walsh is on, right?
he's in training.
Yep, so Andrew is here for ex officio non-voting. I know Kevin will not be on. And Stuart, is Stuart on here? Non-voting advisor? No. And others present. I see Grace from the advocate or advertiser. Welcome, Grace. I guess they're the same. And Joe. Anyone else? All right, good. Let's.
I'm sorry, did we identify
Joe,
who
were
the
there any-
iPhone was?
Pardon me?
It's typically John, but I know John's not on the call.
Okay. Were there any public comments that came in, Joe?
I did not receive any public comments.
Okay, then we'll move on to approval of the minutes from our April 8th meeting. Did everyone get a copy of them?
Yes.
Any corrections?
Nope.
Do I have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
All right, Paul, Penny second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Next, progress update, which I think gets us to Brian's presentation. Brian, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Brian.
It's been a while since we've met, and I think, like they say, I have some explaining to do. So I'd like to give you a rundown of everything that I've done since we really have been initiated, and that was back in March.
I'll send it. It's the same as every week.
Thanks, Joe. So I'd like to share my screen and show you a little slide presentation here. Let's see if I start this from the beginning. There we go. Everybody see my first slide?
Yes.
All right, for the timeline, and I'll shrink this down a little bit to get this hopefully out of everybody's view of the Zoom screen. Just reduce mine. So March, we were initiated with the design agreement with the town of New Canaan. And in March, we were tasked with 3 options. So I just do this as a summary. I'll just give you a summary of what we were asked to do and what we have done. The option A, option B, option C tasks were broken down into option A was to renovate the current headquarters. Option B was to demolish all or part of the current headquarters. And then option C was a new headquarters behind the existing building. So that was kind of a summary of how we were broken down. And I'll get you a copy of this, Bill. So if we have questions, you want to go back to this, you can always have this as a reference. So after the agreement on March 11th, we did go down and visit the site. We wanted to review the existing conditions in relation to what the existing conditions were at the PD, but also, and probably more importantly, the connection between the PD and the EMS. Because there is some codependency there, how the EMS facility is requiring the services at the PD. And I'll go into that a little bit further, but that was really my initial investigation, was to go down there and see the facility. It's been a while since I visited all floors of the PD and wanted to see what the existing conditions were really like. On the 27th of April, we had developed an option A schematic. And we wanted to go down and just test out with the police department, test out our option A. Let them review it, let them, poke holes in it, let them criticize it, let them tell us what they liked and what they didn't like. So option A was really developed in that from March 11th to April 27th. We did also, on April 27th, review the Irwin Park property. And that was an existing building within the park, which the town has a potential use for swing space. So that was a good visit because we did see some potential in the Irwin Park complex to relieve some of the PD staffing during construction. And that progressed onto a May 7th review with town staff of our option A. So we made some tweaks between April 27th to May 7th based on those comments that we heard. We also discussed on May 7th possible alternatives for the option B and C. So option A was pretty well thought out, but option B and C were creating some challenges. And at that time, in talking with the town, the option C, really looking at what we had for option A and discussing what option C may or may not involve, it was a decision that option C really no longer remained a viable option for a couple of reasons. One primarily was your land area. One that we had to consider concentration of uses on that site. And also planning and zoning has requirements for lot coverage and how much you can place on the site and how much parking you would need if you put so much square footage on a site. We discussed how it relates to the EMS facility. There were a lot of challenges for option C that really in discussion made it seem like option C was way beyond anything that the town could even consider, just for a lot of those reasons of loading up the site with too much building, not enough parking, and multiple uses, trying to still maintain a viable police presence on that site and the need for everything that they have on the site.
Hey,
So we-
Brian,
Yes.
just because I can't go back on the screen, I'm just, I want to make sure, when you refer to the options, option A is renovate, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Renovate current, option B, some sort of new combined on-site, and option C is behind. Okay, thank you. I was
Yeah.
forgetting what the options were. Thank you.
Hey, and Brian, on the review of option C, while I agree that it's, beyond the consideration, it should never be, it just doesn't make sense. Who made that decision to move away from that decision?
I don't think it's one person. I think it was a combination involved in that
Yeah, who was involved?
conversation. Was the police department, was
Okay.
DPW, was town hall staff. So we had a number of people on that call. And I don't think one person made a decision. I think it was probably me that recommended how it was no longer a viable option. And I think all the other participants kind of agreed with that for the reasons that I outlined.
Good. Okay, thanks.
So Brian, this Penny, in terms of option C, then were you including tearing down the current police building or trying to keep that and repurpose it?
Well, that was more on the option B, to demolish all.
No.
or part,
This is with option C. If you were going to build a new headquarters behind.
And that was maintaining the existing building.
Oh, yeah, there wouldn't be enough room for that. Okay, no, that wouldn't, okay.
So option B gave me the option to demolish all or part.
Okay, I'll do the best I can.
And then option C was, if the existing building remained, could we build something behind it to supplement what's already on that property? And trying to maintain all the services. So also out of that May 7th meeting, on May 12th, we received additional follow-up and to other discussions that we had on May 7th. And it was requested some examples to go and visit some of the projects we've done, because we were primarily talking about an option A, renovate as new option. So they wanted to know if we have done any projects similar. And I think out of that, you did visit Darien. I still extend an offer to visit North Haven, which is a similar project. of a renovate as new PD. We also recommended to the town that we take on an envelope consultant. And that was because of the existing building, we had a good handle on what we could do with the trim work, on the woodwork, on the cupola. But we really didn't want to continue with a recommendation that it really found a building if it had faulty masonry. So that was because of the building is mostly masonry, an envelope consultant would come in and actually take a professional look at not just the masonry, but the limestone, the mortar, everything related to the exterior wall. And we also recommended a cost estimator. There was interest in option A moving forward. I could not give a definitive cost. And so we recommended, if you wanted to know costs going forward, that we have a professional cost estimator involved. So that brought us to May 12th. On May 19th, FV Consulting, who was our recommended professional cost estimating consultant, was initiated to perform a professional cost estimate on our option A schematic design. That is in process. I do not have it yet. So I don't have anything more to say about how much these options cost, but we are awaiting the cost estimate. And on June 1st, Armani Restoration was initiated services to perform an exterior masonry review on the building. Now, we discussed with the town a couple options of how this gets done and who does it. And Armani Restoration is a contractor who specializes in historic restoration and preservation. They're out of Middletown, Connecticut. This is what they do. This is what they specialize in. We talked about whether a contractor should do it or whether a consultant should do it. And everybody felt for what we were looking for, getting information from a contractor who does this type of work would be beneficial to take a look and give us their professional opinion if they were to come down and restore or renovate. What would they recommend doing to the exterior wall? So that just brings us up to June 1, and June 3rd, 2 days after that, Armani was scheduled to go down to the PD. They actually did show up, but also the rain showed up. So they decided that they were going to turn around and go home, and then they rescheduled for yesterday. And yesterday, Armani Restoration was on site, and they also had Proseco on site. Proseco is a manufacturer of masonry sealants and coatings. And what Proseco does is they conduct what they call a porosity test on the masonry. It's a Ryland tube test. And what it does is, while the masonry looks good, we want to find out how porous it is. Not just porous for the masonry products and the brick, but also the porosity of the mortar, because it all has to work in concert with each other. So they did porosity testing, this Ryland tube test on the masonry. And while the masonry is in very good condition, we're going to get a report from Armani. But just to give you a quick result of the porosity testing is it's very porous masonry. They did a moisture test, and it means that the masonry takes in water at a pretty good rate. But now that we know that, Proseco has products that retards the porosity, and it also allows the masonry to breathe. So you're not sealing it in the sense of it's not being weather and vapor permeable. The vapor is able to permeate, but the water is not. So we're getting a better sense of, if the existing building was to be renovated, what do we need to do and how much would it cost to do it? And all that information is good information that we can get back to the cost estimator and then import that information into a cost estimate.
Brian,
So that's new as of yesterday. Hi, Stuart.
Yeah, hi, Brian. I was just wondering, is this a product and then has to be reapplied every 2 years? I mean, we're looking for a building that'll survive another 50. What will happen ultimately to the mortar?
7 to 10 years, Stuart. They said if you're seeing this product would have to be reapplied.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a clear product. It would have to be reapplied every 7 to 10 years. So that brings us from yesterday to today. So let me update you a little bit further on all of the things we're seeing on the site. This is a site plan of what you have there with the PD facing South Avenue and the EMS facility, and even the apartments to the rear. And what I've put in green are utility lines and utilities that are independent of the EMS. The green areas are just what we're seeing there that goes through the site that we have to know about and deal with, and really have no ties between PD and EMS. But the red lines are lifelines between the EMS and PD. So if I'm on the left side of this picture, I have water and fire service. I have stormwater drainage, and I have primary power, which is totally independent, going to the EMS. But I also have, in the red lines, I have emergency generator power. So the EMS facility is being fed with emergency power from the PD's emergency generator. I have 4 conduits that are running between EMS into the PD, and that's for heating water. We're getting hot water from the boilers of the PD and bringing them back and forth between the PD and the EMS. Some conduits are there for telephone service, and conduits are also there for communications being antenna and fiber. So if you have antennas that are tied to the EMS, those antennas are up in the attic of the PD. And then the last red line that I have to the far right is sanitary. So all of the sanitary from the EMS is going into the PD, and then the PD is taking that sanitary and then distributing it back to the street. So those are critical, that anything that I do on this site, by option B being partial or complete demolition of the PD, I have to really understand how that is going to solve and be successful for EMS to continue services.
Hey, Brian, and Leon, correct me if I'm wrong, but in this year's budget, we allocated funds to establish an independent HVAC system for EMS. I don't think it dealt with the sanitary, and I have no idea about the communications, but Leon, that's correct, right? That's what we approved in the budget?
I remember seeing that, but I
Yeah.
haven't seen.
I'm almost,
Amy,
I'm almost
that's in our,
positive.
that's
I'm
our,
almost positive
Amy, that's in our
on it.
building budget. It's not in
Yeah.
Leon's budget. It's in the town buildings budget.
Right. But Tiger, we did approve that, right? This year?
Actually, Amy, just to be
Right, it was
clear,
just for the boiler. It was like $170,000, but it was just for the boiler itself. It didn't do telephone or communications or sanitary line.
Right,
it's not a new HVAC system. It's just hot water replacement. Everything else is already, HVAC is already in the
Okay,
EMS building. It's just needs a source of hot water.
that's it.
That's
It's
it.
just heating. It's just heating water.
All right, so you already got the AC, right?
The AC is independent already.
Okay, thank you.
It's only heating.
Right.
Some other items in the rear of the site. We have utilities to be aware of. We have stormwater drainage that goes through the back of the site. We have fire and water service that goes from the South Avenue back to the apartments. And then we also have a force main sanitary line that comes out of the apartments and then goes back to South Avenue. But you see the lines, they go through the apartment parking lot and they really don't come into the PD parking lot at all. The storm drainage system is what it is. It all has to slope downhill. So there's a series of catch basins and manholes that are back in the back of the site. So just a basic understanding, this is what we wanted to get from our first visit. I mean, what are the pieces that we have to be concerned with? Our proposed conditions for option A took the site, maintained the existing building, but we have 3 additions to the site. One is an addition, which is an addition to the rear corner, which is a proposed addition to mimic the maintenance garage addition that we have on the other corner of the building. There's also a proposed 18-car carport to take an open structure in the back, but that carport has open sides, covered roof, lighting, CCTV. It is also potential for photovoltaic arrays on that roof. And then the third component is a proposed pistol range. And what you're seeing there is a certified range for a 25-yard distance for firearm certification. It also provides you with 5 lanes of shooting, a control room, a ready room. And the discussion that we had with the police department and the town about putting a proposed pistol range on this site is not to make it integral with the existing building. We would recommend this approach whether we built a new building or whether we renovated this building. But because of the reverberation and noise from firearms
Right.
shooting, that reverberation and noise is hard to control when it's within the existing PD. That's true with any police department, whether it's New Canaan or any other ones we do. And this is the exact reason why in Bethel, we installed the range in a similar manner. We did it as an addition to the building. We didn't put it within the building. So this dimension that you see here actually fits between the upper lot and the lower lot. And there's about a 6-foot difference in elevation between the upper lot and the lower lot. So this building would be kind of buried into that site change. And we would be putting mechanicals onto the roof of this building. So it would, in appearance, look like a 2-story from the rear, from the lower lot, but a 1-story from the upper lot. But that provides 5 lanes of firearms training. And the other component that we had on this site plan was to initiate gate controls at the entrance off of South Avenue and gate controls at the rear parking lot that leads into the apartments. What we feel would benefit the police department is if we controlled what vehicles go into this upper lot, controlled it for EMS staff and fleet vehicles for the police department and some select staff. But if we can control the amount of cars and restrict it to fleet and required vehicles in the upper lot, it does leave the lower lot for additional staff and shift change on the lower lot. And there is stairs access that we can get from the lower lot to the upper lot. So that's another change that we are recommending. Now, the egress path out of this site is 1 way, 1 lane, and that would be free egress both for public and for EMS and for emergency vehicles to exit the site. We're recommending that the gate that's going to the South Avenue apartments be egress only. So that gives emergency vehicles and ambulances another option of egressing from the site, but we see that for egress only. So the only entrance to the site, the lower lot, would be the one off of South Avenue near the public entrance. So we're controlling traffic flow and other vehicles' ability to access the rear of the site. If I was to drive down there today, I could drive into that lower lot, I could park, I could leave, and now I'm taking up space.
Will any of this affect the traffic flow for the cottage or the senior living center?
Not at all, because that has a separate entrance to their parking lot, separate access to their parking lot, and there's no access control proposed for that. It would remain as is.
Hey, Brian, has this been an issue of, I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but has it been an issue that vehicles not affiliated with the police department are hanging out?
That's a good question. We recommended this approach before we even asked that question, but I feel that once we recommended it, that I think the chief can comment that there has been instances where the public is down in that lot. And that's something that they would definitely prefer not happening. So I let the chief speak further if he'd like.
Yeah, I mean, we do on occasion, we've had on occasion, oddly enough, drunk drivers drive to the back of our headquarters and one time hit a telephone pole in our back lot. So traffic does come through there. It's relatively rare for people to park in our designated area, but it is a best practice to have it segregated in that regard so we can contain it better and make it more secure.
Brian, do you have any idea what the number of, whether the town has an obligation to provide parking to the South Avenue cottage? And assuming we do, how many spaces they require or we are obligated to provide?
We asked that question, and I think the answer is that there's not a specified number, and vehicles for the South Avenue cottage are minimal at best. They don't really have a vehicle demand. But
Stuart, let me address that. When we actually installed that additional parking down there with the last police renovation in the 2007-8 timeframe. And at that time, and I'm sure it's still current because I'm still in communication with the South Avenue cottage people, they at the most only have like 2 to 4 cars. None of their residents drive. So it's just staff.
So for purposes of count, for this lower lot, we have 16 spaces from the crosswalk up. And those 16 spaces, we did not add to our counts for police use. From the crosswalk down, we have 24 spaces. We could pretty much count on those for PD access for staff. When you look at numbers, our parking was giving you 69 plus 2 handicapped for total police facility spaces on this lot. It did reserve 7 for ambulance personnel, and then the 16 that I just talked about for the day center, and that did not take into account all of the spaces that you see for the apartments. We just left those out of the equation, but 7 spaces for the ambulance facility you see next to the rear bays. So we did allow 7 spaces there for restricted just for ambulance use. That still leaves 69 plus 2 for police. 75 was the target. With this proposed physical training facility, we are losing 5 on the site, but losing those 5 still gets us to 71 spaces with what you're seeing on this plan.
So Brian, I take it with the shooting range behind, what type of sound abatement would you put into it so it wouldn't be any kind of an issue to the residences around and the South Avenue?
We do have good experience with that, and we are sensitive to the noise leaving the range. So what we've proposed is masonry construction to add mass. The roof would be constructed as precast concrete plank, again to add mass. And we'd have to add some acoustical lagging to the ductwork. But all of those solutions have been tried and true. And the reverberation that you have there is pretty severe, but with the right type of construction, we don't let that noise go beyond the building. We contain all of it within the structure.
So if you're in the South Avenue cottage, would you even know when the police were shooting?
You
When
would
the
not
range
know.
was being used?
You would not know.
Okay, great.
And that would be in the summertime with the windows open.
Okay,
Yeah, because summertime, you might want your windows open at night. And they might be training at all hours of the night too. The training doesn't just happen during the day.
Right.
That they might be having to train at night also.
Hey, Brian, is 5 lanes what you kind of typically build? I mean, we don't have that many officers. Is it
It's
just
not-
kind of, is it just kind of a economies of scale and that's how you do it?
No, it's a little bit more than that. If you're going to invest in a range, you want to invest in a range that gives you proper training for a class. Because it takes an investment of time and energy and to build these and train. So 5 seems to be a preferred training class size. You could get down to 4 or 3, but you see how inefficient it might become for rotating officers through for training. 5 seems to be a preferred number. And with the investment, if you're building 3 lanes versus 5 lanes, the incremental cost is not that
Yep.
much. So the high cost is your initial cost of mechanicals and construction and equipment. And going from 3 lanes to 5 lanes, that doesn't incrementally change significantly in what you need to purchase.
And Amy, the officers train as a group.
Yeah, no, I get it.
They don't train 1 or 2 at a time. It just doesn't work that way.
Okay, that was my question.
Hey,
Thanks.
thank you. And it allows you to have a large enough space that you can set up scenarios where you can actually put a car in there or part of a car, and then you can train around it. And it's more than just shooting in the lane. There's
Mhm.
more to it than that. You kind of need the width along with the length in order to provide a real, true professional training space. Thanks.
so when we cost out the range, can we get an idea about what the costs are going to be for ongoing maintenance? Because I know when we visited Darien, they were talking about how, I guess you still have to do lead abatement.
Yeah.
And things like that, from the range being in use. So I think we should just have an idea on what that means for the town.
Yeah, this would be designed for live fire. So with live fire, you're using ammunition that is lead-based still. You could buy different types of ammunition, which is non-lead. The cost of that's higher, but that, there's an offset. So the cost of the ammunition is also a factor on what type you use in the range. But yes, there is maintenance. There are filters. There's multiple filter packages that go with this too for safety.
All right, so those would all be decisions down the road.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, so now I have what I'm looking to do with option A is renovate the existing building. I think we've taken this from our initial concept of when we told you we were going to do option A, B, C in our initial agreement. We just talked about diagrammatic plans. We've gone beyond that for option A, and now we have specific plans. So we've put more energy into this because it seems to have some viability for discussion purposes, but we've really gone beyond the scope of what we thought we were going to do for this initial concept. So now you're seeing more of a detailed plan option. We've colored it for ease of reading it. And we're starting with the upper level, and we're starting with the upper floor because that's the floor that was most recently renovated. And in the recent renovations, we put in an elevator. We renovated this space for open space so the town hall could use it for swing space when the town hall was being constructed. Since we've left the project, the police department have occupied some of this floor, but it's only with temporary partitions. There's nothing here that was permanent. In reading the floor plan, anything you see with a dark black wall is an existing wall. Anything with a gray wall is a proposed wall. So your corridors are defined, your stairs are defined, your interior space within the corridor is defined, but everything left and right of the main corridor, up and down from the main corridor is not defined, and we can build space there. So
Hey,
we're,
Brian, are the existing black walls, are those structural walls?
some are, yes. Yes, most of them in this plan along the corridor, the fatter black walls are bearing walls. The thinner ones are not. The elevator shaft has been there. We just put the elevator into the shaft. So that's all bearing. So we're maintaining the stair access, we're maintaining the vertical circulation, but on the lower part of the plan, we're bringing up the police administrative offices to this floor. Administrative offices are in blue. What you see in the green is the Detective Bureau and a forensics lab. And what you see in the aqua color are 2 areas for additional training. One is a video simulation training space, and the second is defensive tactics training. And that's mats and areas for physical defensive training. It's not physical training as far as weights, but it's as far as training in defensive tactics. They do have a space like this already, and it's down in the lower left corner of the plan right now, where the administrative conference room is being planned. So it's something that we're just moving. We're not providing this for the first time. They have these. So this is what we're proposing for upstairs. What we're proposing for the main floor is taking the areas in light tan, providing a new vestibule. So we are doing some demolition in this area to bring this building back to kind of its original concept, original glory. New vestibule, enhance the public lobby, new public restrooms for male and female. Going to the left, the training classroom is the existing space that would get renovated. But to the right, providing a new emergency operations center. So it's a secondary meeting space, but also an area that could get outfitted and maintained for video communications and needs in an emergency. So you could run both a training classroom and an emergency operations center space at the same time. Both of those would have some public access to them. Public would also have access to permitting rooms, interview rooms. The dispatch center in red, really the dispatch center is the only area that does not get any renovation because it has been recently renovated. It's working. They seem to be satisfied with the improvements that they did to dispatch. So the areas in red are maintained. Records is in the current location that would get light renovations. Some areas of aqua here are training sergeants, accreditation special projects. Animal control is in blue and we're providing 1 bunk room. And then in yellow, the data telephone equipment is the existing room, but we're converting the property and evidence clerk to information technology, which is the yellow area with computer equipment storage with that. The back of the plan is renovated for patrol functions, briefing roll call, patrol sergeants and lieutenants in a day room are back here. We're adding new restrooms off the corridor in purple, and the purple telephone room is the existing telephone room. So we're looking in this plan to try to maintain rooms that are used for utility purposes, data purposes, communications purposes, and not spending money on moving all that, but spending money on maintaining all that. You see a proposed roof deck. This is over the new physical training room, which is downstairs, but it gives them an outdoor space similar to what we did at EMS, that staff could have access to some outdoor space because there's really nothing left on the site just to have some outdoor experience. So this would be off of this floor, and it would be an elevated area over the lower level. So I know I'm going by these quickly, but I have a lot to tell you about what we're planning here. Downstairs, the main corridor would get renovated back to its original corridor. The area in the front of the building would get renovated to male locker rooms, providing 3-foot wide, 2-foot deep lockers for 45 officers, new showers, new toilets, new sinks. Other areas in blue are armory and gun cleaning, SRT
Hey,
storage.
Brian?
Yes.
Brian, just to make sure I'm remembering, so where the new male officers locker, that's where the old shooting range?
You are correct.
And then the floor above that we went through, the back part is kind of where we just have that open area that's not doing anything, and you put all this functional space in it, correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
That is correct. So the area that is currently the male locker room is now in green, and it's all for evidence receiving, evidence intake, and evidence storage. The way that evidence is being stored within the building right now is kind of haphazard at best. It's kind of everywhere. They use multiple closets and multiple floors. We need to get that all congregated into one location for better control. But off of evidence storage, you can also have double lock storage requirements for narcotics, firearms, valuables, and satisfy everything in the green area. The above the green area, some more blue space, says patrol functions for a new female locker room. Another 10 lockers would be placed there for female officers. All the amenities would be similar to the male locker room. And the physical training room is a new addition. It's about 2.5 times the size of their existing physical training room. It would give them more physical training capabilities. While they still had defensive tactics on the 3rd floor, this room would be filled with cardio equipment, weight training, and then used by all of the officers. The area that you see in orange is prisoner processing, Sallyport, detention. Some of this, while utilizing the existing space, we are reconfiguring the space with new construction, new cell construction, the latest in booking for booking rooms, providing handicapped accessibility to all of these spaces, including cells. And we're expanding the width of the Sallyport. We're expanding the width because we're installing a wider Sallyport door and taking the space, which is not all Sallyport right now, but a lot of it is patrol storage. And we're opening the space back up for properly sized 1-car drive-in, back out Sallyport. The found property and bulk evidence are wire mesh partitions to further control access and chain of custody for evidence, whether it's found evidence and found property or bulk evidence. The purple in the upper left is the garage that's existing. We're not doing anything more. That'll be maintained and with its current use for vehicle storage garage. So no additional work on that garage space.
One of the things that Darien had, it was a bunk room because a lot of our guys live so far away. The shifts jump on top of each other, and it seemed like a pretty good thing to have. I know they use the EMS bunks at times. Was that the decision here to not include a bunk room?
No, if you can see in the upper left here in blue, there is a bunk room
Oh, okay.
right below the accreditation and special projects office.
Got it. Thank you.
There is a bunk room. We do want to provide it. It has to have a lot of controls in use as to who has access to it and when and why. The police feel that they can control that for emergency purposes. So looking at the 3 floors, then it became the question of, can the police department stay in this building while it's being renovated, or do they have to move out? Not only does the plan work, but does the plan work for purposes of construction? So we've then developed these plans further to provide a phasing plan option. And it's broken into 3 phases. Phase
So Brian,
one,
just, but in terms of, I have a comment then just on the structure, and I know we'd get into it more in detail later, but if you go back to like the locker rooms,
Yeah.
on the last slide, I mean, one of the things I noticed about Darien, and that was done a while ago, is that they really, the men's locker room was terrific and the ladies' locker room was sort of scrunched in there, and there was no flexibility for planning for the future, for how forces are going to look. And this one, it just strikes me with this plan that the women's locker room facility is better. It looks a little bit cramped. I can't really tell spatially on it. But is there anybody, or can we, before we settle on a final plan, is there anybody that's doing sort of anything different, where there are certain portions of the locker room areas that can be shared, and then there are other parts that are just that allow, are separated for men and women? I mean, they're having co-ed dorms, at the colleges now. And this is all sort of looking a little bit sort of 20th century. So I'm just wondering, before we settle on the final plan, if we can't explore what might be really innovative in other police departments.
Penny, that's a good question. And we have combined locker rooms, but only for small departments. And that becomes a financial consideration. And they share locker spaces, but then we have to provide changing rooms for them to go from their lockers into changing rooms. That concept works for small departments because they really don't have a good concept of their male-female designations. And it has to remain flexible for them because their numbers are small. For a department of 45 or more, I think that concept hasn't been initiated yet in these PDs. What we do see as far as future growth in departments is if a facility can get to about 20% female staffing levels, that's progressive. So we're looking at a 45-person department. At 20%, we're saying that's 9 lockers. We've provided 10 in our plan. And that's our best planning guide right now to recommend to you is, you're not at 20% now. It would be something to look at to say if you could get to 20%. But that's why we've also provided 45 male lockers, because now you have 55 total. I'm not saying you're going to have a department of 55, but you really have to understand what's the male-female split on that. So we've tried to give you that flexibility as far as future growth. Do these locker rooms work for today and for 20 years into the future, 50 years into the future?
Yeah, Brian, I kind of agree with Penny's thought process on this, because if we talked to you 20 years ago, would you have said, 20% female? I mean, I just think we need to think about that critically. I mean, to say that only 20% of our officers may be female, I'm not sure if that's going to hold going forward. So I just think we should just think about that.
Yeah, right now we're about 13% female, which is the highest we've ever been in history. So it's possible we could get to 20% or more.
I don't think this is I think this is something we can talk about later. I just want to make sure in our planning process, we have that chance at a later point to talk about it. These are all just lines on a piece of paper, and we can figure out, where they might be changed better. Anyhow, but I just wanted to raise the point.
So now putting this plan into action.
Brian, move your slides so you can see the phases. It's just off the screen.
Oh, let me go back. I'm trying to make it smaller.
I can see them fine, just so you know.
Okay, I'm just seeing phases 2 and 3. And
Are you not seeing the whole
No,
thing? I can make it, it seems to make it bigger, but I can't make it small.
that's good. I can see that.
And it pops up again.
Don't worry about it. I'll catch it later.
Phase one, so I say, we've looked at this as a 3-phase project, with phase one being 6 to 7 months, phase two being 4 to 5 months, and then phase three being 3 to 4 months. And the reason I'm showing you the upper level first is upper level is primarily phase one. So the contractor would have use of the upper floor. And then the upper floor would have to be vacated for the start of phase one. But this is where the Irwin Park property becomes a really viable option, because the Detective Bureau and storage would go to Irwin Park. Utilize that building, and Irwin Park would occupy those detective bureaus and staff for the duration of the entire project. They would not move back until this whole project is done. So while phase one would be completed, the admin would move into the upper floor, but other patrol functions would occupy the other areas on that floor before we move the Detective Bureau back. So it's swing space that would get completed on the upper portion of the plan for phase one. Phase two is primarily now the contractor is going to come onto the main floor. And to renovate the main floor, they would renovate most of the main floor during phase two, but the public would not be allowed into the building. So for a 4 to 5 month period, we would find alternative ways for the public to get police contact or police services. It could be done in a number of ways. We've discussed a couple options, but dispatch would continue to operate. So dispatch would not be relocated. Dispatch would stay at this building, but the public would not have access to this building. So you see a lot of these areas in the main floor is phase two. Phase three would just be coming back at the end of the project and just cleaning up the corridors and putting new finishes and flooring down in the corridors. When we're at each of these floors, we're also renovating the exterior wall. So new windows would go in. The exterior wall would be increased for insulation and energy efficiency. And so if we're touching an exterior wall in any of these phases, that's when we would be putting in new windows and replacing them with impact resistant glazing within the entire facility.
Brian,
Yes.
how are you solving the water seepage problems that we currently have in the lower level?
Well, we're at the lower level now. And the water infiltration that we're finding is along the front wall of the South Avenue elevation. That's really the wall that's been buried. And it's literally been buried because that was a 3-story building out of the ground when it was first constructed. There were windows along that wall.
Really?
And the windows have been infilled and the building has been backfilled. So that was originally, you had a large set of stairs that went way up to the main entrance. I mentioned earlier that the masonry is very porous. So what you've done is you've backfilled against a very porous product. So that's creating the issue. So we excavate out along the wall. We clean that exterior wall. We do some repairs at the window infills, and then we provide adequate waterproofing and additional insulation along that front wall. It's very.
That's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good news. I had no idea that was the case. And so, as opposed to an entire shell being of dubious waterproofness, if that's a word, to be able to actually isolate the problem and fix it is, goes a long way.
And we would be fixing it from the outside, not from the inside. We would be exposing that wall again, providing proper waterproofing and drainage, and then we're confident that that problem is solved. On the lower level, you see some 1s and 2s and 3s.
Excuse me, could you go back to the second level, the slide before this? Number 2 on the right-hand edge, where today it's information technology. No, one, yeah, no. You're right there, stop.
Oh, I wanted to blow it up.
Oh, okay. Right, the information technology area. Right now, that is where the servers are. So during reconstruction, what happens to all that equipment?
You see, there's no number here, Stuart.
Uh-huh.
That's where the servers are.
Okay,
That's where the servers stay.
okay, so you're attempting to do all of your construction around this without disrupting it.
Yep. It,
Okay.
just like there's no number at dispatch right now.
Right, gotcha.
That
Okay.
stays, this stays. What we're doing here is we're changing this office use from evidence and property clerk to information technology. And we're turning this computer into, this area into computer storage.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
That's a renovation, and we're replacing windows. If we're against an exterior wall, we're gonna replace those windows. We'll make this window into a door, and then we have the roof deck that goes over the top.
Thank you.
Downstairs, we have some 1s and 2s and 3s. Prisoner processing and detention, the orange space is a 2 for a couple reasons. One is phase 1 takes 6 to 7 months, but that's how long it takes to order and get a lot of your cell detention equipment is 6 to 7 months. So while it can be done at any phase, it's going to take 6 to 7 months to get equipment. So why don't we put that off until phase 2? The sequence that's going to happen on the lower level is phase 1 is going to renovate the former range into the locker room and provide the new physical training addition. Those 2 spaces is phase 1. But then the dance begins on the lower floor, because for phase 2, the female locker room gets renovated, but the female officers would use the existing male locker room, which is the area in green. So while the male officers move into their new locker room after phase 1, the females utilize the old male locker room. So that females would have the locker rooms completed in phase 2, they'd vacate the male locker room existing space, and that would be converted in phase 3 into the evidence storage areas. So that's why there's a 1, 2, and 3 on the lower level. You see areas downstairs that also are not being touched, and those are a telephone data room, which maintains its function and use. The boiler rooms, the water meter, the electrical switchgear, all of that remains. And the boilers have recently been converted to gas. They have new boiler burners in those. The water meter room is where your fire service comes in for sprinkler protection. And so all of that infrastructure stays from South Avenue into the building in its current location. The switchgear stays in its current location. So that's how we can renovate this building while it's still being occupied and just do it by floor. Now, we are doing fire suppression work within the building, but we're going to do it by floor. So the 3rd floor, we're going to provide new sprinkler protection, and we need to bring sprinklers into the attic, for instance, but we can take it from the water meter room through the building and get it to those spaces when they're being renovated. So I've outlined for you all of the requirements of each phase and expected durations. So option A is just a summary of what I just said. I don't have to spend too much more time on this, but we improve the plan for both function and efficiency. We do not have to relocate the PD, but we are moving the detectives and storage to Irwin Park. We do not require any offsite location for dispatch. We do have to go offsite for prisoner processing and holding for about 4 to 5 months for phase 2. It does come with a lower first cost compared to other options. We'll resolve all construction related items at the exterior, being waterproofing, that was brought up at the front. The cupola, we looked at the cupola and we have in the cost estimate, providing a new cupola, taking the wood one off and putting on a composite cupola. We want to look at what we can do to make this building work for the next 50+ years. So taking the wood off the building and replacing it with maintenance-free composite materials is what we're putting into the cost estimate. So we're not holding back on the costs estimate to say, we're just trying to make it cheaper. We're trying to make it right. So new windows, impact resistant glazing. The total construction on this is about 16 to 17 months. The firearms training range is a separate facility. It will have a separate cost associated with it, so you can identify that. The carport is for 18 vehicles. The police had recommended at least 10 vehicles. We're providing 18. There's potential for photovoltaics, and the access control would be part of the project for the site and the fleet vehicles. So all of those were what we pointed out.
Hey, Brian, one quick question, Brian. What does lower first cost mean?
I think compared to other solutions, this will come with your lowest first cost. For option A, option B, and option C that I'm looking at, this would be your lowest first cost. If you're looking at building a new facility on another site, I don't have the information on that, but the construction cost would be lower for a renovate project versus new construction.
So do you anticipate a second cost and a third cost? I mean, why are you calling it first cost?
Well, first cost is what you'd have to appropriate for the construction. That's what first cost is. If you want to initiate a lot of sustainable components to the renovation, those are your first costs versus operating costs, which is then second cost, third cost. That's operating costs down the road. How much would it cost you down the road? But this is first cost of what you need to get appropriated to complete the project and walk away.
Okay.
So these are the full construction. This is all the construction. You're thinking, so your first cost is really another way of saying what it will cost us to construct the renovated as new police building department.
Correct.
But not including the range.
Including the range.
Are you including the range in that?
Yeah, you will see a price when I get the pricing back, you will see a price for a range.
Okay.
Or now that's new construction. So whether you build that here or anywhere, it's going to be the same cost for construction. But you have a site now that can accommodate it here at South Avenue.
Right. Got it.
And the reality for our neighbors is, yeah, there'll be construction vehicles and construction noises for the duration of the renovation. That's just a fair statement and just the way it is. Is that fair, Brian?
That's fair, just like EMS went up and, we had to tear down a building to put up a building there.
Hey, Brian, in the proposal, two things. How many square feet are we having for the police department? And also, and I know we're trying to use what we have. So when this came forward, do we have systems that their useful life is going to be maybe only 10 more years and we need to plan to fix them? Or are we going to be kind of pretty close? How close to brand spanking newly renovated are we going to be? First question, how many square feet? Because I think this is on the high end, which is kind of cool. But then B, just that ongoing, second cost considerations we have. And it might be too early to say on this. So.
The existing building is 27,410. So that's not including the physical training room that we're adding or the range that we're proposing.
Yeah, that's separate.
Yeah, so to give you an idea of square footage, 27,000 square feet is what you have for renovation.
Okay. And a lot of that dead space they have, you're putting it to use.
I think we're being, not just efficient and functional but it's going to be very user-friendly for the police department. I think we're putting things in a way that supports statutes, supports accreditation, and supports future growth. So yeah, I'm excited about the potential. Option B, not so much. Because option B, I have, this option of demolishing all or part. And when I looked at, take the existing facade and preserve it or tear it down, provide an entirely new structure. So this is kind of an open-ended, boy, if I had everything at my disposal, how could I improve what I just showed you? And the only purpose I want to give you an option B is if I feel that it's an improvement. And I still have everything to deal with here that I showed you earlier. So I can't really, I can say I'm going to separate completely the EMS facility from the PD, but there's a cost to that. So I'd have to provide sanitary, the heating is probably less of a concern, but I'd need to provide a generator, emergency power. That's a have to have. So do we add another generator to the site? So all of these things were swirling around in my head. And all I could come up with really for option B is to take the addition that's on the back of the building that was done as an addition, take it down and provide it new. The functions would be similar though. The spaces would be similar. So what would I achieve here in doing this? I still think the site is the most efficient is what I'm showing you for vehicles. I think covering 18 spaces is a plus. I think providing the pistol range as a separate facility is something I'd recommend whether I had a clean piece of paper or not. So what do? If I was to take the addition off the back and build it new, I would now require the police department to move off site for the duration of the construction. They could not continue to work here if I'm tearing that back area off. The only reason I'd say you have consideration for tearing that addition off is it's been painted, but it's been painted with the wrong product. You can see the paint is peeling. So we are looking to chemically remove that coating to put a proper coating on it. We want to put mechanicals on the roof, and we may need to supplement the roof structure to get the mechanicals onto that roof. So we're gonna have to do some things to that addition, but does it really require us taking it all down and moving the police department out? And it's for a consideration, but you're coming at a higher first cost because you're moving the PD off-site. So it may look like it's a weak solution, but it doesn't really substantially improve the function or efficiency that I showed you in the first plan. And you do have to relocate. We would put admin detectives and the patrol staff at Irwin Park. We would have to find an off-site location for dispatch, an off-site location for prisoner processing and holding for a duration of 14 to 16 months. As they say, the painted masonry and the roof loading would be completely resolved, but I can resolve that in other ways. And the site remains the site. So I'm kind of stumbling with option B to say I've got a really good idea for you. I don't see the need to tear the building down with everything that we've seen and reviewed with the existing building. It's a presence within your community now. People are familiar with it. I think it has a nice presence along South Avenue, and just to replace the architecture, I don't think is prudent. So that's my opinion. Option C.
Brian, one comment. You mentioned it in your summary, but replacing the windows also, you can restore the historic look of the building with the correct windows.
I'm really not a fan of the last window replacement that was done there with what looks like casement windows. This building really demands a double hung solution. Getting it back to its original architectural solution is only going to enhance the beauty of this building. And we have an opportunity to do that with option A. And option C, again, while it was taken off the table, it was taken off the table for really three main reasons. And one was the EMS facility has to stay on this site. So how can we repurpose the site with EMS still there and tied to the PD? We need to maintain the vehicle circulation for emergency response by EMS and just lot coverage was a concern with option C. So what's our next moves? Here we have what we've done to date. We're waiting for the envelope masonry report, which was yesterday. The porosity testing report, I've given you some update on that, but we're going to get something more in writing. I'm preparing to do a square footage comparison. So this gets to the question of how many square feet do we have? I want to compare the needs assessment to our option A. So if the needs assessment says you needed X number of square feet in an office, I want to show you how many X square feet you have in that office. So I'm going to do a comparison chart so you have a better sense of square footage. The professional cost estimate, the estimator is waiting on the first two pieces of this, the masonry report and the porosity testing report. They're waiting for those reports also so they can import that into their cost estimates. So I don't have anything more, but I should have something soon on a cost estimate. And then I do owe you a final report.
So in terms of the cost estimate, before we get like a close to final number, I would want to have a time and opportunity as a building committee to vet sort of all the spaces more. I mean, I'm saying that I'm very encouraged by this plan. It looks terrific. And just had questions really about details that aren't appropriate at this level. But so with the cost estimates, I wouldn't want to think that this was going to be the final plan, because we as a building committee might have some, tweaks to it. So just wanted to throw that out there.
No, exactly right, Penny. And in a broader sense of what our building committee needs to evaluate and decide on. I mean, the building is owned by the people, by the public. And so at some point, a very public discussion of the things that we're looking at, the different choices, and a decision by the community, i.e. the building committee and our trained professionals at the town hall, needs to happen before we can. And so it's a balancing act of moving forward with a renovate solution, which, as Brian has shown us, is something that is very, very encouraging. And of course, the potential details moving forward with a renovation solution. But we as a building committee, we as a community have not yet looked at each other and decided that, renovation is the way we're going. So we have to do that in a very formal public process yet.
Brian, can I ask you, I think in a couple of years ago when we were playing around with this, this renovation, rebuild is new, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
In terms of the needs assessment of the police department, I remember a couple of years ago, we said, we'll get 90% there. Do you feel that this, with tweaking, obviously, gets what the PD needs, And to me, I think maybe even more because it has a little bit of space. I mean, is your general sense that with this plan, dealing with the water issue, dealing with the space, that we would be delivering a police department top-notch building that's going to serve the community for decades?
I'm very proud of this proposed solution. As far as my experience with police facility design, this gives the town a facility that would well support its police department for the next 50 years.
Excellent.
I think the police department, also has an opinion on whether this serves their needs, but I'm just speaking as a designer of doing this and turning these projects over to the communities. I would be very proud of this solution for New Canaan.
Thanks.
Brian, is the roof in good shape? Does anything have to be done with that, or is that sort of I mean, that's a small point, again, in terms of the overall cost, but I was just wondering where we were on that.
The existing building is slate, and the slate
No.
has had some repairs.
Actually, Brian, they've subsequently replaced the roof.
Oh, okay,
The roof's
so
new.
it's recent. It's
Yes.
recent. though.
Yes, very new, within the last 5 to 7 years.
Okay,
We have in our cost estimate, we told the estimator to put some roof repairs in for some flashings, but we did not include full re-roofing. But we are providing a brand new cupola. And that's,
I love the cupola.
yeah, it would replicate what's there, but it would be maintenance free.
And one of my greatest concerns with the existing building is you've probably heard this story before, that when we installed the brand new dispatch console center room, whatever, the electrical wiring in the ceilings and walls were so old and or so poorly marked that the only way we could ultimately be assured that we weren't cutting a critical power line was simply to run new ones. If that's the case with a lot of different areas within the building, obviously this needs to be resolved as we go through this renovation. I think we have an opportunity once in a lifetime when the walls are all open to take all the old wiring out completely and put in the new and fresh wiring, which is well marked, well labeled and logical. And I can't emphasize that more, both with regards to wiring, telecommunications, septic, water, sprinkler systems, all of the above. These are core infrastructure systems, and I think they deserve to be state of the art. And we ought to get rid of it and bear the cost of getting rid of the old.
Agreed.
Is that what they'd be? That would we be putting in all new wiring and all new HVAC pipes, and so it would basically be a renovate as new?
It's a renovate as new. That's the concept that we're moving forward with. We're looking to maintain your boilers for heat, for hot water, but distributing that hot water for heating in all new systems, all new radiant panels, providing all new HVAC throughout each area once we renovate it. So we also have new wiring and new plumbing.
Brian, the phasing of the project seems like it could be kind of challenging. Have you done this before with such a scope at other police stations, and how effective was that? And then did the time frame fit the constraints? I mean, I think this is it's aggressive, but there are just some concerns with the phasing and the challenges to the construction side of phasing a facility like a police station, and to what Stuart was just mentioning, to wires and infrastructure and all the other things and the disruptions and interruptions. I'm just interested to know if you've done this elsewhere at this size before.
It's a tremendous challenge. I'm not going to take it lightly. It's a tremendous challenge. We've done similar projects, and it's a complete inconvenience to the police department throughout the construction. No question about it.
So I guess my point
Darien was one.
Well, my point would be that if is there a way to look at this as sort of, maybe a hybrid? Maybe we look at doing this in such a way of renovating this, but doing it all at once, instead of trying to do it in certain little sections all around. Can we do this all at once, which would require finding another place to put the police station for a certain amount of time? But to Stuart's point, to get a full-on brand new infrastructure, everything that can get this building to the point of saying, hey, we really feel comfortable, we will be good for the next 50 years. Is that a possibility?
And we can present costs either way. It shortens the construction duration. It does allow the contractor site area, because when we renovated last time on the 3rd floor, you do need contractor parking. You do, but the church across the street did relieve that requirement for the contractors. So there are solutions that we've already implemented on this site with former construction projects. So we're just going to provide you the information. The information you're going to get is, here's a way you could do it with the police department occupying. Here's the cost if the police department moves out. You know, we're not saying you have to do one or the other. We're just going to give you information. And then it'd be up to you to make the decision.
It would also be fair to say, if Paul's good comment on the phasing, I think those are pretty amazing times. But even if we added some contingency on those times, it's still a pretty great way to go ahead. But I would sort of vote with you, maybe give him some more contingency on those times, because there are going to be things that are going to be discovered. And I wouldn't want to go in and lowball on that, on the time.
It's just having, you all have more experience, but just in the town projects that I've done, having a more flexible, plan for the renovation, with maybe being able to move more people out, even at a slightly higher cost to the town, could be the most prudent thing, because we would have more control. And I would think that in terms of moving cells and things like that, if we're going to have a shooting range, which I think would be terrific, and other communities, I would imagine other communities would want to use it, that would provide them some incentive to help us with the cell blocks. I just don't know the cost of moving the dispatch. That to me seems like it's the highest one if we have to move them out completely. So maybe there's even a different hybrid plan where we only keep dispatch there, except when we move everybody else out. We can explore all those. This is just terrific work.
But as a pro forma, we shouldn't re-engineer that right now. Let's just say that maybe
Right.
we
No,
could
that's what I'm
add a
saying, but-
contingency and proceed on the planning.
But Darien was a challenging project. I think you saw the end result. I think Darien had more challenges to do this while occupied than I see in New Canaan. So we've done it before. North Haven, if you want to go see North Haven, we took an existing building and renovated as new. A lot of similarities with North Haven and New Canaan, and it was only completed a couple years ago. So it's a newer facility.
Which one, North Haven?
Yeah, North Haven.
So we might want to do, I like these tours. They've helped me out very much. So that might be something, if other building committee members are interested in going up to see what they've done.
I agree very much there, Penny, and I'm sure Leon can reach out to them and try to set up a date where we can go up to North Haven.
Hey, Brian, did North Haven vacate, or did they renovate while they were living there?
They completely vacated.
And how long did it take you to do their building when they were out of place?
A similar time frame, about 16 months.
Mhm.
They had a space across the street, a town hall annex that they moved everything to.
Got it.
So they had available space. They didn't lease space. They used existing town space.
We have a lot of space. It may not be beautiful, but we have many options. So, you got to crack some eggs to make an omelet. So if it's not perfect for one, again, you got to go with that.
Yeah, similarly, they did have a reciprocal agreement for prisoner processing. They did go to Hamden and utilized Hamden's prisoner processing and detention and cell areas. They did not relocate that to town space, but they used Hamden.
If you built the driving range, the firing range first, could you use that as swing space, or is that so specialized and not appropriately air conditioned and heated that it's not good?
Only for storage, I would recommend. I wouldn't put personnel in
Okay.
any long term.
Brian, I don't remember what you did with the Sally port during construction.
The Sally port was tied with the prisoner processing and detention, all done at one time. So that you wouldn't have a Sally port need if you didn't have prisoner processing on site. So that would all be a reciprocal agreement with another community.
Okay. And one more quick question with regards to quote, a hardened building. I know you're bringing in sprinkler systems which are required. Are there other hardening areas that we'll need to be addressing during this?
Yeah, we are adding bullet resistance in all areas off the public lobby also.
Okay. And floor infrastructure, roofing infrastructure, walls, anything of that nature that are required?
As far as the floor structures, they're adequate. The roof structure is adequate. What we are doing on the exterior wall is we are adding metal studs and drywall around the perimeters. If we're replacing windows, we're taking the windows out. We're providing 2.5-inch metal stud wall construction against the interior side of the wall. So we can run new electrical to new outlets. This gives us a pathway for new electrical. It also provides us a cavity for additional insulation. So we're providing new spray foam insulation to the interior face of the wall. So you're getting a higher R value with more efficient windows, better thermal envelope. So you're reducing your HVAC loads.
Mm-hmm. What would you guess your R value would be by the time you're done?
Probably about 25 to 25, 28.
I would love to hear, Leon, what are your comments about this? Do you think this rent, I mean, going through a construction is always sort of hard and painful. It's not at all as easy as having a new building, but can you, does this building provide you the Renovate is New, the spaces and functionality that you're looking for? We'll have to tweak the design, but I just want to, we're pretty enthusiastic about it, but I don't want to go too far if it doesn't meet your needs.
Yep, I think it more than meets our needs in a lot of different ways. I have, one concern obviously is the phased renovation part, which is very challenging, I think. And I don't know if it's going to work. I think we can make it work. I think it'll be difficult. Just because I know some condition issues of the building will require complete replacement of systems. And I don't know how we'll be able to function, but I trust Brian, I trust his expert opinion saying that it's possible. I'm happy with the design as long as our experts are telling us this is a 50-year plan that's going to fulfill our needs that long, and the building will be in such a state in 40 years that we won't have to do another complete renovation perhaps, but I don't know when its useful life is going to end, but I think it does meet our needs and fulfills some gaps in our training, and frankly will help us better train our officers and help morale and all that. So I'm happy with the plan. It's just a matter of execution is I have a few questions about.
Okay, good, thanks. I mean, we'll need to get all the questions and I'm sure Brian's heard similar questions before and we can get there. Not for right now, I guess.
So from a flow of information perspective, Brian, what do you think is the timetable for the additional work that's being done now?
I expect the masonry report within a week, which would place the cost estimate within 2 weeks. And that would coincide with my final report.
Which we will have by our next meeting on July 8th, I guess, right?
That's correct.
And Bill, I think Penny raises a extremely good question I just want to go back and touch on that again, which is, Brian will have an estimate, but then how many times do we go through the revision of the space? And if we go through the revision of the spaces, then that updates the cost estimate again. And how many cycles of that do we go through before we finally feel as though we've got a good price? And and that's also using temporary spaces, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in terms of as Leon was saying, the phased approach, what happens if we want to push a little bit more out of the building so that the contractors have a little more space to work within? And, so at what point do we begin to speak publicly about a price when in fact we're still at very rough early estimates?
The questions I try to speak right now, my lawn guy is blowing leaves right out my window. I hope that's not messing up the audio too much here. But I believe that we have to make some broader decisions as a committee and community in the town that relative to the direction we take before we start fine tuning the renovation cost. And we have to understand that we'll be making decisions with 90% of information, because you're right, the cost for that we're going to be looking at will not be finalized before we have to start narrowing down the work going forward. And I think as a committee, we have to make some decisions about how that process. You're right. I mean, whether we start deciding these things after July 8th, whether we get the final report from Brian on July 8th, and what that, how much cost will be in that report. And then are we going to wait a few weeks, a month before we start having more discussions about narrowing our scope to a particular path of action?
Well, the
Mr.
first thing,
Chairman,
Bill, is first thing we have to do is decide this is the plan we want to pursue, and then there's a series of logical steps.
Yep.
Confirmation of the architect, start of the detailed design and preparation of construction documents, going out to bid, all that sequence. But we need to get to the starting line. We need to outline what has to happen between now and time we actually decide to start down that process. And we're going to need an appropriation at some point for the design and construction document phase of the project. And then when we get some bids back, we have another session with the town to get the actual construction costs approved by the town.
Right, and enough opportunity for the community to see what's being considered publicly, so that, and not just, have a quick thing during the summer. I mean, they need to digest it and have an appropriate amount of time to think about it. And it can't all happen during August. You're absolutely right.
So I'm thinking, Brian, when we get an idea of costs, if that's at the next meeting, to Paul's point, I think we would want to see, what it would cost with a, plan that provides for moving more functions out of the police. I don't want to say moving everything out, because, that might not be the best plan. But I think, for a cost for allowing us a little bit more flexibility, a little less tight a construction plan, so that we're reducing the possibility of bumps along the way.
You did build that into my agreement to get those costs for relocating the PD offsite for the duration of the construction. So that is part of my agreement that will be included. And another procedurally, just to let you as a committee know, that I'll give Joe the credit that the cost estimator is being contracted directly through the town of New Canaan. So he's not within my agreement, so I can turn over my final report. You have authority to direct the cost estimator any way you want for additional information. And doesn't have to go through me.
All right.
The reason the reason I think I can give Joe credit for this is you can utilize this cost estimator for any number of scenarios that you have going forward, whether it's option A, option B, or build new. You have a cost estimator who's going to work with the town on all of those.
So can we get a review then about how much money this committee has under its control now for this project?
Didn't we-
Because typically the cost for that cost estimator would be something that we would pay and we would be directing.
Didn't we get a $500,000 appropriation?
Yes.
So let me just comment on that. We do have a $500,000 appropriation. And the cost estimator was originally included as a line item of the 50,000 that the committee approved. And we basically just took that money that was already allocated, that was going to be through Brian's contract, and we hired him independently just so that we could use him for other solutions, even if it be solutions created by the other architects. So we had one consistent.
So
estimator.
the cost for the cost estimator are being paid by our building committee.
It's under the 50,000, yes.
It's under the 50,000. Okay, so you know what? So I just think going forward, we need to come up with a procedure so the building committee knows when we're spending something and just in advance. I mean, this sounds like we always knew we were going to need a cost estimator, but I just think we need to have we're a town building committee, we're working with the town, but the funds, we need to know where they're going, when they're going there. Just as a procedural issue, so we're all on the same page. So if we
Understood.
do-
The 5,000 was identified in the item that was approved, and the amount was slightly under 5,000. So I didn't go back to the committee, but I will in the future.
Right. I just think we'd want to know want to know who we are hiring and stuff like, I mean, it's good. It's all progress. So that's great. It's just going forward.
So Bill, it seems to me like, several things could happen, but the first thing, and I don't know much about it, and maybe you do, and certainly Stuart probably does. The other activities were going on, we need to get to a conclusion that says, this is the plan on which we need to go forward or not,
Right.
one way or the other. And then if we do that, then we ought to have Brian prepare for some public hearings where we can present this plan, not just to the committee, but also to the general public so that everybody knows what's going on. And then we need to get either a vote or the sense of the Board of Selectmen, Finance Council, that we're going to go forward this. You're going to see bigger numbers coming, but either the 500,000 will cover a certain phase, or we need an initial phase. I'll just put a number out of $1 million in order to cover the construction documents.
I think you're absolutely right, Jim. All this stuff has to be happening. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of it's going to be happening in this summer, but it is what it is. As long as we leave sufficient time for people to digest it, that's okay, I think. And, but we need, once the final report comes, which we'll have July 8th, to have, meetings and a process established before then that can keep this ball rolling, and that includes a discussion of the group, the other architect, and the work that they are doing, and looking at alternative sites, and so a report back from the cost estimator, looking at all these things so that we can, so that all this information can be presented to us and we can present it to the public.
All right. So who has the ball for the next step?
It hasn't been discussed, but I assume it's me, Jim. I mean, I will be talking with the town to come up, with Joe and Tiger and Kevin to come up with a meeting process to enable all this.
So, Bill, and Joe and Stuart. So in terms of the committee that's kind of at the town section looking at other options, is that something that you will know kind of your landscape on that, so that in our July meeting, you'll be ready to say, here are other options? Because it's weighing this versus against other options. And then, of course, there's all those intangibles about being able to get something done on site versus, you know, changing something in this town, which we see trouble changing anything. So in terms of, you know, one of the intangibles on this one is the cost of being able to get something done, you know, versus the other. So anyways, so would that be kind of in the scope of things in July, you guys can kind of see what your thought process is on other options.
Or does it even have to wait till July? Stuart, what's our expectation? I kind of feel like we're in the dark.
I think it's Joe to respond to that, or Tiger.
So we'll have everything ready for July.
There you go.
And that will be an in-person meeting, I presume, Joe?
Yeah,
With a Zoom option, if we're not around. Thank you.
yeah, well, I'm sorry, yes, I think Zoom has been working quite well for everyone to present. The hybrid meetings have been kind of challenging from a acoustic standpoint. So it would probably be best to keep it a remote meeting.
You know, I think just going forward, I think we're going to need to have a hybrid because
Okay.
some of us are just going to be, I mean, I know I'm planning to be in Florida next winter for a couple of months. So maybe we could get somebody working on the acoustical challenge because this is, you know, sort of taking advantage of a pandemic to make everything work better for everybody.
Mhm.
And they could talk to our hybrid meetings actually have been working pretty well at the Board of Ed. We've been doing it that way. And so maybe we can have our two technicians, you know, talk to each other and sort it out.
I agree with that, Penny, because frankly, I feel uncomfortable, you know, making big decisions for the community in a completely remote environment. I believe that the public, you know, should have the opportunity to look us in the eye and make their feelings heard. I believe that.
Yeah, in the Board of Finance, Penn, we did have, like Tiger was able to Zoom in while we were in there. So they seem to be working towards a process that works for everyone. And I know that Tucker said that they're even working on the audio to improve it.
Yeah, I think it can be done. It's just, it was just terrific for all of us.
You know, it was harder bringing in I guess the residents was where we run into a problem on the audio. If we stick with just Zoom participants, and then in-house participants, it works. But I agree with you, Amy. You know, I'm hoping that they continue to offer the hybrid. You know, if we can get anything out of it, let's get that out of it. You know.
Tiger, we want you to keep coaching. We want you to
Thank you.
keep coaching.
Yeah. So we'll shoot to
I
have.
have to drop off. Is that okay? I got.
So do we have any other business to discuss today?
No, really, it's about the next steps, and I think we've been sort of hitting on that right here, and I think as we look at July 8th and beyond, would you guys also be amenable to having other meetings scheduled between, let's say, July 8th and August 8th? That seems like a long time once we have the information in front of us on July 8th to be. We might need a meeting or two.
Yeah, I propose if necessary, we have a Zoom meeting, either another one in June, late June, another one in late July if necessary.
Yeah, we may need one in late June to finalize as a committee what we think the process should look like.
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Very good.
All right. Any
Thank
other
you,
business?
Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
welcome.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brian.
And I'll email this to Joe, so he'll have this presentation.
And you'll send it out, Joe, right?
I'd love to get a copy of it.
Okay. Thanks all. Very good.
Thank you.
Very good, Brian.
Thank you.
Unanimous
Thank you,
consent,
Brian.
we'll close the meeting. All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.